Thank you, Ron. Good afternoon to you all. Beautiful winter day, if there is such a thing. I did want to mention, before I forget, did get a call from Vicki Dalton, and she said that the insurance company did have a doctor go and evaluate Richard's condition, and the decision was made to continue paying for his care. So that was a big relief for them, and certainly God intervened and gives them some peace. And I know they thank you all for your prayers. Barb and I certainly appreciate the cards and the phone calls for our anniversary. Who knew that would happen? That was the last thing we thought about when we were married. 60 years from now, the earth won't even be here, let alone us. But it went by quickly, so we do appreciate that. That means so much. And we'll try to make another 60, and if you all stick around, we'll have another cake. So. But I was trying to decide this week because I had another message ready and thought, the last thing I want to do is talk about marriage, because who am I to talk about marriage? I'm certainly no expert, nobody to give advice, nobody to really tell you how to have a good marriage. But I do know that if God is involved in your marriage, it works. We've proven that over the years, and that's what I wanted to share. That marriage is a divine institution set apart, created by God to bring a man and a woman together as husband and wife, and to live as one, to have a peaceful, joyful life, caring and loving for one another, creating a family, growing a family, and just enjoying everything that God has given us. Because most of the world in 2026 is confused about what marriage really is. They don't know. They can't define a woman or a man. They can't make out what's going on. They just don't know. Some say marriage is a union between two people regardless of their gender, but as long as they love each other, it's okay. Some say marriage is old-fashioned and a thing of the past. If two people really love each other and make the decision to live together, in the eyes of God, they're married. But as Christians, as those who do believe in God and do believe in what He's doing, what difference does it make to us what marriage really is? Should it be a divine institution? Should it be something that's heartfelt? Something that's lifelong? Something that takes a lot of hard work and dedication? Should it be something that God must remain the center of in order to work? I know many of you have been married a long time. Many of you have had lifelong loves that are no longer here. But you have the memories of those marriages to keep with you through the rest of your life. What beautiful memories those are. But what if our children decide that they see marriage as just moving in with somebody, not going through the formalities, and that's what works for them? Could we support that? could we support any kind of a marriage other than what God has ordained? That covenant that Mr. Frankie talked about, that God makes. Covenants involving Him, a contract with Him, an agreement with Him, a commitment to Him. Could we convince ourselves to compromise with a description of what marriage is other than what God created? Because the world certainly has. We know that about 40% of the marriages today fail. So does it matter if a couple goes through all the years, all the hard work and effort to be properly married? What difference does it make? 40% aren't going to work out. But my hope is that every person who decides to find a lifelong mate to share their lives with, to love, and have a family of their own is successful. There's nothing better in life than to have someone to share it with. The good times, the bad times, the tearful times, the laughter, all of the things that are involved in a marriage that we all go through. There's nothing better than to have that person with you. There are great examples of couples that we met during our lives, within the church, out of the church. Couples that have enjoyed a long and happy marriage together. And we can learn, we can watch, we can listen, and we can try to do what they're doing that's right to help us to grow in how we deal with our marriage, how we deal with our mate. I always am humbled by the woman who married me. I think it was a blessing that I got her young before she really knew too much. But I convinced her, at her young age, she didn't know any better. I convinced her I was a man of the world. And then that was kind of true because I'd been to Toledo a couple of times. So she thought she was getting a well-traveled husband. But it's been so wonderful because we got to grow up together and we can share things that we learned as we did grow up together. But I remember we had great friends in the church and with another couple, and we were in I think it was Kalamazoo or something, and we had stopped off somewhere to get a drink or something, and so we were sitting there with our wives, and we got up and went to the bathroom or something, and so one of these guys went over to Barb and her friend there and said, "Are you guys really with them?" And that's how I think about her. Is she really with me? But what a blessing our marriage has been. And the reason it's been that way is because God is involved. We had no idea. God was not invited to our wedding. We didn't know He wanted to come. We didn't know He existed. We knew He existed, but we didn't know that He cared one way or the other what we were doing. And learn from, or was more important at that. And that's where God certainly comes in. We begin to realize that our human nature can be very selfish. What about me? What about my needs? What about my wants? we can find ourselves saying that more than what can I do for you? We remember to keep God at the center of our marriage, and He will keep us balanced. He will keep us focused on the needs of our mate instead of the needs for ourselves. The beautiful thing is God gives us the freedom to make choices in our marriage as He does everything else. He desires that we make unselfish choices that's good for both mates. Because marriage isn't all about the husband or the wife. It's about both. Deuteronomy 30, if you turn there with me. Deuteronomy 30. Deuteronomy 30. In verse 19. It says, I call heaven and earth as witness today against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both you and your descendants may live, that you may love the Lord your God, that you may obey His voice, that you may cling to Him, for He is your life and the length of your days, and that you may dwell in the land with which the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give them. That blessing of life, to enjoy everything that God has given us, to not get bogged down with the stresses and the pains and heartaches that life can sometimes deliver, but to stay focused on God and rely on Him, and remember that He wants us to enjoy everything that He's given us. A good marriage is kept through lots of prayer and hard work. Based on those numbers, 40% of marriages failing. It would tell us that many couples are not making good choices. They're not including God in their marriage. They're not seeking His help. They're looking for the easy way to achieve success without the hard work. And there's no way to do that. God does realize that given the freedom to make choices, He realizes also that because of our weak flesh, there's a good chance that the choice we make will be the wrong one. And it will be without Him. If we leave Him out of our decisions. Without God involved, our marriage will fail. Because we'll fail to understand God's plan for us. When we look at what He's provided, we go back, and the two of us started out together, just the two of us. And our 3 children came along, then 6 grandchildren, and now 6 great-grandchildren. How does it get any better than that? And what we've learned over those years is much more important than what our children learned. Because we were growing too. But what a blessing comes with that marriage. God has spiritual laws in place for our success. And if we make the choice to disobey those laws, our marriage, along with everything else, will suffer. And as a married couple, together we succeed or we fail. together. One mate can't do it all. Takes two. Takes two to make it work. If you remember in Genesis, God joined Adam and Eve together to become one. Ephesians 5. Ephesians chapter 5. In verse 21, words for a married couple to live by: submitting to one another in the fear of God, working it out, making those difficult choices. Both a husband and a wife have to be mindful of the other one's needs. I remember when I was working at the schools and we were doing some of the bond projects, building programs, and it could get stressful. And I'd come home and Barb could tell by the look on my face it probably wasn't a real good day. So we would jump in the car and go to McDonald's and have a cup of coffee and talk. Just talk. Made everything better. Didn't talk about anything exciting or important or anything else, just talked. That made the whole day bearable. But she knew something wasn't right, and she was willing to take her time and let's go get a cup of coffee. Or she was having a bad day, needed something a little extra. I knew it was an Olive Garden night, and that would fix things. But we had to pay attention. God will teach us how to truly love one another in our marriage, because it's difficult to know how to do that. How do we do that? Nobody taught me how to do that. I don't know if they taught you. And always try to be well-groomed, especially if she's seen those sweats a million times. She don't want to see them on a date. Would we have wore those sweats when we first met them? Absolutely not. I think I wore my best peg jeans and Beetle boots. Who knows? But you want to look your best. You always think back to remember when. Remember when. And to show affection to your spouse, hold hands, put your arm around each other. That pleases God. It really does. And there was a time where you couldn't keep your hands off each other. Philippians 2, if you turn there, Philippians 2. Philippians chapter 2, and in verse 2, it says, "Fulfill my joy by being like-minded, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out not only for his own interest, but also for the interest of others." It's sad, but there are marriages that are just off the rails. I've seen it in the church. I've seen it out of the church, and it's sad. It really is sad, because that's not what God intended. And again, you've got to be willing to do the hard work. There are several keys to make our marriage a divine one. First, put God in the center of your marriage. Every day, God needs to be involved. And then we need to evaluate ourselves. We're told to examine ourselves before the Passover, but we can examine ourselves as a husband or a wife. How are we doing? Doesn't matter how many years you've been married. You could be newlyweds, you could be married. I know Mr. Rhodes was telling me about a couple that celebrated their 80th anniversary. But we need to look at ourselves. Compliment our mate often. Often. That's important. And especially for the men, and maybe some of you women, we need to apologize when we're wrong. That takes just about everything in you to do that. I was wrong. But we have to do that. Because it's the right thing, and God would expect nothing less. And tell your mate you love them every day. Every day. Because there may come a day when you don't have that opportunity anymore. So you tell them every day that you love them. Barb and I both are humbled by what God has done in our lives, bringing us together, keeping us together, and giving us all the time we've had together. If we have another 60 years, so be it. I just hope we know who each other is in that length of time. But I hope people will take, especially us, that God has called out of this world, and do everything possible to make our marriages strong, loving, make our marriages important. And we do that by including God, thanking God every day for what He's given us. What a blessing. What a blessing. And again, the examples I've seen in the church, I've seen here in Lansing, of men and women and how they love their spouses. What an example that is. Because that's not something that really goes on out in the world anymore. It's a rare thing. But it certainly is a godly thing. So I don't know, how to explain our marriage. I don't know if you can explain your marriage other than God has given us a blessing so wonderful that it's something we need to thank Him every day for. Keeping God at the center of our marriage to make our marriage a divine institution is our choice. We make that choice. We make that choice to work hard or not work at all. And certainly God has given us something worth working for. I just wanted to share that because it's been quite a week just thinking about 60 years. Many people have been married a lot longer, but not us. And we never had any dreams or thoughts about getting to 60 years in our marriage. And just so, I guess, taken back by that because it's just there. And And I finally unpacked, she packed, probably back when we were married 3 or 4 years, she packed a box. So if I screwed up, she'd set the box with a couple of pair of socks and underwear in it so I could take off. I finally unpacked that box this week. I said, I think she's going to let me stay. So anyway, thank you all for the cards, for the phone calls. Means a lot. We'll continue, or I should say, Barb will continue setting a good example for us. And really appreciate it. Stick around, eat the cake. Somehow we got to get some cake to Mr. Rhodes, because he does like cake. And but thank you all, and hopefully just thinking about what God has given us in marriage is enough to keep us all excited, keep us all grounded in our marriages and in our relationship with each other and with God. So that's my 2 cents worth for marriage, and it's a good thing.